What's up, everyone? This is your host, Ghost, coming to you live with another wonderful video. How is everyone doing today? I am thoroughly exhausted. Um, you know the story. Got done at like 2, got home around 3, and I'm ready to go back to bed. Yeah, like roughly 2.5 hours of sleep at currently, so I need to sleep some more. I'm tired as fuck. But promise the show, do a show. Um, So we're gonna check out. Today is gonna be the day where we check out Biden's address to the nation. He addressed it. He addressed the nation yesterday. And told why he has decided to drop out. At least that's what he was supposed to do. And I don't know about anyone else, and maybe people will think differently, but I'm not sure why he dropped out. It's not very clear. Maybe I'll listen through a second time and it'll become clear for me, but I really couldn't tell you at the moment why he dropped out. What's the reasoning behind it? Now, there's a lot of talk going on about it. I've heard things about it's green screen behind him. This whole thing is recorded, etc., etc. Um, just a whole bunch of shit going on. Claim, but I think it is recorded. I don't know. It's just my gut feeling, but we'll check it out. Oh, is my audio still good? That's not what I wanted on. Let me just make sure the audio is still good. Because now, they were doing an update on my shit. Give me 2 seconds. Uh, Unless someone in chat wants to tell me. All right, cool. I was able to verify that my audio was indeed good. And that's important. All right, anyways. Um, so yeah, they're saying, people are saying this, this is a recording, and then this is that's a green screen behind him, shit like that. So we'll take a look. We'll see. We'll see if I'll be able to figure out the reasoning he dropped out. Because I don't remember him really saying it. And then afterwards, we're going to check out the FBI Director Ray's testimony yesterday. Before the House Judiciary Committee. I will check that out. Um, Now, since I'm such a nice content creator for you guys, um, most of the goddamn hearing for Director Ray was fucking useless. All right, Congress people are idiots. All right, there's a good amount that just grandstand about bullshit. Try to make this whole thing about gun control. Try to, basically was using the time instead of asking questions about the assassination to be pompous and try and um, just push their political agenda instead of asking some actual legitimate questions. So we're gonna skip all that. So you don't have to suffer through that bullshit. And I got the timestamps of the people actually asked decent questions. And even the people that I've picked out that have asked decent questions also did political stuff, so we might skip that. But so instead of you having to suffer and watch through this whole damn thing and listen to a bunch of congressmen blow smoke up their own ass, we're just gonna listen to the Congress. We're just gonna listen to the questions the Congress people had, and yeah, so help you out. And then if I have time, um, I may or may not do. It depends on how exhausted I am. I don't think I'll have time to do it. But we may check out the state police chief testifying for the the House Homeland Security Committee. So there is that. Tomorrow, by the way, FYI, I'm not going to be doing a show tomorrow in the morning. I'm probably going to do one in the afternoon, late afternoon. And I'll be covering the debate that's going to happen tonight at, is it 5 p.m. Eastern? Let's see what. There's a debate going on between Destiny and Andrew Wilson. It's was January 6th an insurrection? It's 5 p.m. I think it's my time, 5 p.m. So 5 p.m. PT Pacific time. So I think that's going to be a very interesting debate. If you guys don't know, Destiny has had Andrew Wilson on the blacklist forever, so now that's back on. Destiny is pretty much lost to Andrew Wilson most of the goddamn time at this point. Andrew Wilson has admitted that he has lost once with Destiny. So just in case anyone's curious, this is the debate. It's in 5 hours. You can watch it on the Crucible. It is going to be, here we go. So here we go, folks. The debate you've been waiting for. Andrew Wilson versus Destiny, moderated by Myron Gaines of Fresh and Fit. But be here or be, you know what. Okay. So yeah, so Myron Gaines of the Fresh and Fit is going to moderate. I don't think it's going to be I think it's over video, and it's not going to be in person. But yeah, but we'll see. I have no idea. We'll check it all out. But yeah, so I'll be covering that Friday. All right. Anyways, so a little housekeeping before we get to go forward. Follow me on rumble.com/withghost. That is where I'll be live, regardless. Wherever I am going to be, I will definitely be live on Rumble. YouTube.com/@withghost is the YouTube. Twitch.tv/officialwithghost. And on X, official WGhost. Follow me on X. You can find out when I go live. You could also watch me live if you choose to do so. If you want to interact with me, though, you're probably going to have to use Rumble. But you can at least watch me live if you want. So that's the housekeeping keeping I will be doing. Man, I'm fucking tired. So let's go and listen to Biden's addressing the nation. Okay. I just want to point out how unusually tan Biden is. He is extremely tan. Motherfucker got spray tanned just to show that he's not that sick.
My fellow Americans, I'm speaking to you tonight from behind.
And I don't know if anyone can tell, but he's slurring the fuck out of his speech. He is slurring ridiculously. He sounds like he did just recently have a stroke.
Behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. In this sacred space, I'm surrounded by portraits of extraordinary American presidents. Thomas Jefferson wrote the immortal words that guide this nation. George Washington showed us presidents are not kings. Abraham Lincoln, who implored us to reject malice. Franklin Roosevelt, who inspired us to reject fear. I revere this office, but I love my country more. It's been the honor of my life to serve as your president. But in the defense of democracy, which is at stake, I think it's more important than any title. I draw strength and I find joy in working for the American people. But this sacred task of perfecting our union, it's not about me. It's about you, your families, your futures. It's about we, the people. We can never forget that. And I never have. I've made it clear that I believe America is at an inflection point. One of those rare moments in history when the decisions we make now determine our fate of our nation and the world for decades to come. America's going to have to choose between moving forward or backward.
Maybe it's just me, but doesn't it look like the my right side of his face? So if you're looking at it like I am, it's gonna be my right. His face seemed to be like still drooping a little bit. Seems like it's still a little drooping. This may be the rumors of him having a stroke might be true because it just looks like a portion of his face is slightly drooping.
Hope and hate, between unity and division. We have to decide, do we still believe in honesty, decency, respect, freedom, justice, and democracy? In this moment, we can see those we disagree with not as enemies, but as fellow Americans. Can we do that? Does character in public life still matter? I believe I know the answer to these questions because I know you, the American people. And I know this, we are a great nation because we are good people. When you elected me to this office, I promised to always level with you, to tell you the truth. The truth. The sacred cause of this country is larger than any one of us. And those of us who cherish that cause, cherish it so much. The cause of American democracy itself must unite to protect it. In recent weeks, it's become clear to me that I need to unite my party in this critical endeavor. I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future, all merited a second term. But nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition. So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. That's the best way to unite our nation.
So, translation, I want to do a second term, but the party's pushing me out. It's basically like what I get. That's a translation I get is like, I want to do a second term, but the party's saying no.
There is a time and a place for long years of experience in public life. There's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices, yes, younger voices. And that time.
He says this, and Kamal is 59. It's not a young voice. What are you talking about?
Place is now.
Excuse me.
Over the next 6 months, I'll be focused on doing my job as president. That means I'll continue to lower costs for hardworking families, grow our economy. I'll keep defending our personal freedoms and our civil rights, from the right to vote to the right to choose. I'll keep calling out hate and extremism. Make it clear there is no place in America for political violence or any violence ever, period. I'm going to keep speaking out to protect our kids from gun violence, our planet from climate crisis that is the existential threat. And I will keep fighting for my cancer moonshot so we can end cancer as we know it because we can do it. I'm going to call for Supreme Court reform because this is critical to our democracy, Supreme Court reform.
What is that Supreme Court?
I will keep working to ensure America remains strong, secure, and the leader of the free world.
Uh-oh.
I'm the first president in this century to report to the American people that the United States is not at war anywhere in the world. We'll keep rallying the coalition.
We're basically at war with Russia, all right? We're basically at war with Russia. We're basically at war with the Was it Iran or Hamas, Gaza, whatever? What are you talking about? Okay, although we're not physically in war, we're kind of at war. So that's just ridiculous. And like, he had that disastrous pullout of Afghanistan, still fucking a war right there. I don't know what he's talking about.
Coalition of proud nations to stop Putin from taking over Ukraine, doing more damage. We'll keep NATO stronger, and I'll make it more powerful and more united than any time in all of our history. I'll keep doing the same for our allies in the Pacific. When I came to office, conventional wisdom was that China would inevitably surpass the United States. That's not the case anymore. And I'm going to keep working to end the war in Gaza, bring home all the hostages, and bring peace and security to the Middle East and end this war. We're also working around the clock to bring home Americans being unjustly detained all around the world. We've come so far since my inauguration. On that day, I told you, as I stood in that winter, we stood in a winter of peril and a winter of possibilities. Peril and possibilities. We were in the grip of the worst pandemic in the century, the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. We came together as Americans. We got through it. We emerged stronger, more prosperous, and more secure. Today, we have the strongest economy in the world, creating nearly 16 million new jobs, a record. Wages are up. Inflation continues to come down. The racial wealth gap is the lowest it's been in 20 years. We're literally rebuilding our entire nation, urban, suburban, rural, and tribal communities. Manufacturing has come back to America. We're leading the world again in chips and science and innovation. We finally beat Big Pharma after all these years to lower the cost of prescription drugs for seniors. And I'm going to keep fighting to make sure we lower the cost for everyone, not just seniors. More people have health care today in America than ever before. And I signed one of the most significant laws helping millions of veterans and their families who are exposed to toxic materials. Most significant climate law ever in the history of the world. The first major gun safety law in 30 years. And today, the violent crime rate is at a 50-year low. We're also securing our border. Border crossings are lower today than when the previous administration left office. I've kept my commitment to appoint the first black woman to the Supreme Court of the United States of America.
Yes, that's his achievement. He elected the first black woman to the Supreme Court. Remember, his only criteria for the Supreme Court was being black and female. The literal definition of DEI, I think. It's like, I want to make her black and a female. It's all you got to be. Ridiculous.
I also kept my commitment to have an administration that looks like America and be a president for all Americans. That's what I've done. I ran for president 4 years ago because I believed and still do that the soul of America was at stake. The very nature of who we are was at stake. And that's still the case. America's an idea. An idea stronger than any army, bigger than any ocean, more powerful than any dictator or tyrant. It's the most powerful idea in the history of the world. That idea is that we hold these truths to be self-evident. We're all created equal. Endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. We've never fully lived up to it, to this sacred idea, but we've never walked away from it either. And I do not believe the American people will walk away from it now. In just a few months, the American people will choose the course of America's future. I made my choice. I've made my views known. I'd like to thank our great Vice President Kamala Harris. She's experienced, she's tough, she's capable. She's been an incredible partner to me and a leader for our country. Now the choice is up to you, the American people. When you make that choice, remember the words of Benjamin Franklin hanging on my wall here in the Oval Office. alongside the busts of Dr. King and Rosa Parks and Cesar Chavez. When Ben Franklin was asked, as he emerged from the convention going on, whether the founders have given America a monarchy or republic, Franklin's response was, a republic, if you can keep it. A republic, if you can keep it. Whether we keep our republic is now in your hands. My fellow Americans, it's been the privilege of my life to serve this nation for over 50 years. Nowhere else on earth could a kid with a stutter, from modest beginnings in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claymont, Delaware, one day sit behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office as President of the United States. Here I am. That's what's so special about America. We're a nation of promise and possibilities, of dreamers and doers, of ordinary Americans doing extraordinary things. I've given my heart and my soul to our nation, like so many others. I've been blessed a million times in return with the love and support of the American people. I hope you have some idea how grateful I am to all of you. Great thing about America is here. Kings and dictators do not rule. The people do.
The people.
History is in your hands. The power is in your hands. The idea of America lies in your hands. You just have to keep faith. Keep the faith. And remember who we are. We're the United States of America. And there's simply nothing beyond our capacity when we do it together. So let's act together. Preserve our democracy. God bless you all. May God protect our troops. Thank you.
So yeah, can you tell me why he dropped out? Like seriously, like the actual reason. Like the most reason you can really get is the party didn't want me, so I popped out. That's the reason I'm generally getting. It's not very clear. Now, here's something interesting that's been going on. So, Biden's height has dramatically changed. So, like, here's how they used to be. All right, you see Jill; she's basically like the top of her head's basically to his ear. Okay, and now Biden is like she's up to Biden's shoulder. And here's the thing: she's wearing heels, so she already should have an increase in height. And now in this one, let's see, yeah. So her head's basically to his shoulder. Okay, maybe just slightly. Her ear is probably closer to his shoulder. Now, here's them. I picked a better picture, where it's even assuming she's probably wearing heels in this picture, and you can tell that her head's to his ear, and then in this one, her head's to his shoulder. So, like, there seemed to be a dramatic, difference in height now. Like, again, her ears, basically to his shoulder, heads to basically his ear. Now, her the top of her head's basically to his shoulder. So there's something weird going on here. That Biden did they switch out Biden with someone taller? It's kind of weird. That's all I'm saying. It's a little weird. All right, let's get into this. So this was yesterday. This was the this was the testimony of FBI Director Wray. We'll check this out. I guess I'm not going to make you guys suffer through and watch this whole thing. For one, it's 6 hours. I don't have 6 hours. But two, there's a lot of the fucking Congress people that just came up there and to jibber jabber about political shit. And there's giant breaks in between. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not even going to get debating. Yeah, I guess I'll let, because they do opening statements. I guess I'll let those play out, and then we'll get into the questioning.
In today's hearing by recognizing the fact that we no longer have one of our great members with us, Sheila Jackson Lee, as we all know, passed away. She was a dedicated public servant. Her service on this committee.
Oh yeah, and there's a lot of a lot of them was like, oh, Sheila Jackson Lee was so great, blah blah blah, crap too.
Excuse me, spanned nearly 3 decades and included shepherding through countless pieces of legislation. I said yesterday at subcommittee hearing that I don't know that there was any member of Congress who got more out of 5 minutes than Sheila Jackson Lee did. And she was just a pleasant spirit who we all enjoyed. And we're thinking about her family. We all certainly will miss Sheila. I yield the ranking member for comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this room and our hearts feel a little emptier today as we mourn the loss of our dear friend and colleague, Sheila Jackson Lee. In the nearly 30 years that I served with Sheila on the Judiciary Committee, I witnessed her boundless.
Oh, this guy's a giant, like the biggest yapper. Like when it was his turn to ask any questions, he just prattled on and didn't say shit.
Energy, her courage, and her character, as she lent her voice and her legislative talents to nearly every issue that came before this committee. Whether it was advocating for just and humane immigration reform, working to protect voting rights and preserve our civil liberties, or delving into the technical details of administrative law and intellectual property, Sheila was always at the forefront of our work. Sheila made perhaps her greatest mark serving as
I don't.
Through it all, she stayed true to her values.
This country. Now, Chairman recognized himself for an opening statement. July 13th was a terrible day for America. We all agree spirited debate, fighting for what you believe in, are part of what makes this country the greatest nation in the world. But the First Amendment and robust political debate are not consistent in any way with violence. What happened in Butler, Pennsylvania was a tragedy that took the life of a good man, Corey Compratore, leaving a wife without a husband and 2 daughters without a father. Others were injured, and of course, former President Trump, by the grace of God, survived the assassination attempt. There are a lot of unanswered questions about the security failures that day, questions about decisions made before the rally, questions about actions during the rally, and questions about statements made after the event concluded. Prior to the rally, why was the president's security detail denied requests for extra resources? Why weren't all the buildings secured? There were a finite number of buildings that needed to be secured. Why wasn't that done? Why was the president allowed to walk out on the stage when there was a suspicious person on the property? During the rally, what exactly happened between 6:09 and 6:14, those critical 5 minutes?
Now, here's the problem with this committee is they ended up asking the FBI director a lot of questions about the Secret Service stuff, which doesn't apply to him at all, and he doesn't give 2 shits about him. The second the shooter fires and then was shot himself, and everything that was really like, all his actions that caused him to decide to fire at Trump is what matters to the FBI. The protection of Donald Trump doesn't matter to the FBI. Why Trump wasn't removed immediately or wasn't let on stage doesn't matter to the FBI. A lot of these Congress people are fucking morons. And a lot of this is just political theater, pure political theater, and nothing more. And it's simply that. So there's really like a lot of questions were just dumb. But yeah, the FBI is just focused on the shooter and his actions that led up to him getting on that roof and firing. He doesn't, like, the FBI director doesn't give a shit about the security. He doesn't give a shit about why this was this way, this was that. He doesn't care. He just is focused primarily on the shooter and the events that led him up to taking the shot. That's all. But these Congress people are morons, and they started asking the FBI director about the Secret Service protocol and shit like that, and it was a huge waste of fucking time. So that's why. That's another reason why I skipping around a lot. Let's see. I have 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I got 15 sections, and out of this whole 6 hours and 49-minute thing. What did I say? 16? I think I said 16. 16 Congress people asked good questions. And even in some of these, they still threw in their political shit. So that should tell you everything you need to know.
We know from briefings from the director and the deputy director of the FBI and other information we've gathered that at 6:09, the shooter was identified on the roof. At 6:10, the counter sniper was notified. Counter sniper teams were notified about the shooter. 6:11, the shooter fired several shots, injuring and killing one person, injuring others. At 6:12, the counter sniper took down the shooter, and at 6:14, President Trump was escorted off the stage by Secret Service agents. We need to know what happened play by play, moment by moment, second by second, the communications that took place, again, during that critical 5 minutes. And then finally, after the rally, why did both the Secret Service and Secretary of Homeland Security, Mayorkas, lie to the American people? July 14th, the day after the attack, Secret Service spokesman Anthony Guglielmi said this, quote, "The assertion that a member of the former president's security team requested additional security resources that the U.S. Secret Service or the Department of Homeland Security rebuffed is absolutely false." The next day, Secretary Mayorkas said, "That is an unequivocally false assertion. We had not received any requests for additional security measures that were rebuffed." But 5 days later, top officials repeatedly rejected requests from Donald Trump's security detail for more personnel. And on the 21st of July, the New York Times, confirming what the Washington Post reported, said, quote, "Mr. Guglielmi acknowledged that the Secret Service had turned down requests for additional federal security assets for Mr. Trump's detail." 180-degree change. Why did they initially lie to us in the days after the attack in Pennsylvania? Finally, we hope to learn more today from Director Wray about the shooter, his use of the drone, the explosives that were in his car, how he got on the roof, and a host of other questions. It is our hope that Director Wray's testimony can begin to give answers to the American people about all of these questions and concerns. So, Director, we appreciate you being here, and we trust that you're going to be as transparent with the committee and the country as you possibly can. And I'm sure you understand that a significant portion of the country has a healthy skepticism regarding the FBI's ability to conduct a fair, honest, open, and transparent investigation. And that skepticism is based on what they've witnessed over the past several years. The American people have seen a Biden-Harris Justice Department that can't tell us who planted the pipe bombs on January 6th. They can't tell us who leaked the Dobbs opinion.
Again, more political theater. They're just, political points. Like, what is a hearing about the assassination attempt have to do with January 6th? This is ridiculous.
They can't tell us who put cocaine.
Make a new separate hearing for all this other crap and question people then.
The White House. Biden-Harris Justice Department who raided President Trump's home. Biden-Harris Justice Department who worked with social media.
Yeah, I'm going to let this go faster because I'm really tired of listening to it. And the problem is Jim Jordan actually ended up asking some good questions.
Companies to censor Americans.
Now we got to do
Biden-Harris Justice Department let the country believe that the Hunter Biden laptop was misinformation when they knew at the time it was authentic. And maybe most importantly, a Biden-Harris Justice Department who retaliated against whistleblowers who came to this committee and spoke to us about these issues. Last week, we sent you 12 questions about what occurred on July 13th. We expect you to answer those questions and the others that I've just outlined. And again, we thank you for being here today and appreciate your willingness to answer the questions that the committee is going to have. And with that, I would yield to the ranking member for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, 2 weeks ago, our country witnessed a shocking assassination attempt on a presidential candidate. Now, I disagree with Donald Trump in almost every policy area imaginable. I'm frequently shocked and outraged at the plans he has for our country and the words that come out of his mouth. And I've dedicated much of the last 8 years to fighting his agenda. But regardless of my strong feelings about Donald Trump's behavior, I unequivocally and unabashedly condemn with every fiber of my being the attempt against his life. This was not just an attack on a man, but an attack on our democracy. Political violence erodes the very foundations of our nation. The concepts of freedom of speech, of peaceful transitions of power, of a democratic government at its core, these cannot exist if political violence is allowed to fester and to go unchecked. And if you think that this one assassin's bullet was a bolt out of the blue, and not part of a wave of violence that has threatened this nation for years, then you have missed the point of what my Democratic colleagues and I have been imploring you to hear for some time. Election workers, many of them working for free, face near constant threats of violence. In one recent instance, an Indiana man pleaded guilty to threatening to kill an election worker who said that there were no irregularities in a recent election.
I just can't stand this. I can't listen to this again. It's political theater at its best.
Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Let the record affirm. Let the record reflect that the witnesses answered in the affirmative. Thank you, and please be seated. We have votes coming in about 10 minutes, but we definitely want to get through your opening statement as far as we can. And this is going to be an interesting day on Capitol Hill with the Prime Minister of Israel here as well. So, Director Ray, you're recognized for your opening statement.
Good morning, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Nadler, members of the committee. I want to begin by offering my condolences on the passing of Representative Jackson Lee, who served the people of Texas in this body of our efforts to protect the American people and uphold the Constitution. I am proud to be here today representing the 38,000 special agents, intelligence analysts, and professional staff who make up the FBI, men and women who every day work relentlessly to counter the most complex threat environment I've seen in my tenure as FBI director, and maybe in my entire career in law enforcement. Before I go any further, I also want to acknowledge and offer my deepest condolences to the victims of the horrific assassination attempt in Butler County, to the friends and family of Corey Comparator, who by all accounts lost his life protecting others from danger, to the other victims, two of whom were critically wounded, and of course, to President Trump, former President Trump, and his family. As I've said from the beginning, the attempted assassination of the former president was an attack on our democracy and our democratic process, and we will not and do not tolerate political violence of any kind, especially a despicable account of this magnitude. And I want to assure you and the American people that the men and women of the FBI will continue to work tirelessly to get to the bottom of what happened. We are bringing all the resources of the FBI to bear, both criminal and national security. Now, there's a whole lot of work underway and still a lot of work to do, and our understanding of what happened and why will continue to evolve, but we're going to leave no stone unturned. The shooter may be deceased, but the FBI's investigation is very much ongoing. To that point, I also want to acknowledge that I recognize both the congressional and the public interest in this case and the importance of this investigation to the American people. And I understand there are a lot of open questions. So while the investigation is very much ongoing and our assessments of the shooter and his actions continue to evolve, my hope here today is to do my best to provide you with all the information I can, given where we are at this point. I have been saying for some time now that we are living in an elevated threat environment. And tragically, the Butler County assassination attempt is another example, a particularly heinous and very public one, of what I've been talking about. But it also reinforces our need at the FBI and our ongoing commitment to stay focused on the threats, on the mission, and on the people we do the work with and the people we do the work for. Every day, all across this country and indeed around the world, the men and women of the FBI are doing just that, working around the clock to counter the threats we face. Just in the last year, for example, in California, the FBI...
All right. I'm sick of this. I didn't listen to the opening statements, and now I'm like, all right. So let's move. All right. So we're gonna get to the very first person that actually asked a decent fucking question.
Echo the comments made by others, especially the ranking member, decrying the state of political violence in this country. It's completely unacceptable. Actions, criticism, that make a couple of on case here. We don't know yet, but I was Mr. Biden and very, an element of, mainly Republicans, maybe Democrats. Was it all over the board? Can you enlighten us about that?
Oh, no.
Republicans, can you discern, was there, an element of, mainly Republicans, maybe Democrats? Was it all over the board? Can you enlighten us about that?
Well, this is a place where it's particularly important for me to reiterate the caveat that I've included before, because in this instance in particular, we have a lot of legal process out for additional accounts and things like that that the shooter is associated with. So we're hoping to learn more, and we're still exploiting a number of the digital devices.
Right.
I think it's fair to say that we do not yet have a clear picture of his motive, and I think it's important for me to explain because I understand.
So that's a good question. Because there's been a lot of rumors that he's a Republican, he registered as a Republican, et cetera, et cetera. And there's that stuff, and then there's a whole rhetoric conversation. He keeps saying, "Oh, this is because of bad rhetoric." And what the FBI is saying here, at least his director, is like, we don't know his motives as of yet, and that's going to end up being very important and key.
Of course, why everybody wants to know the answers to those questions. Often in an investigation, from interviewing people that the subject was in close contact with, looking at the individual's social media accounts, messages, often things, physical evidence in the person's residence. You might see a manifesto, things like that. We're not seeing that yet, but we are digging in hard because this is one of the central questions for us. What I can say is that the shooter appears to have done a lot of searches of public figures in general, but so far we're seeing kind of news articles and things like that. And so the images that have been reported about, really what we're talking about there are when you do a news search of an article, the image appears in the cache as opposed to like a search for that specific individual. But again, I really want to be clear that that's a place that we're doing a lot of work right now, and so more to come on that.
Well, I thank you for that clarification. We're interested also in the role of access to weapons when it comes to this terrible crime. The shooter used a semi-automatic rifle, really a weapon of war, that sadly has also been used in mass shootings around the country, including in my own district. It seems to me that the assault weapons ban that was once in place has to be a part of the national answer to curbing the epidemic.
Here we go. Let's push in a political dilemma. Assault weapons ban's not going to do anything. Because here's the thing. Like, assault weapon bans didn't do shit in the first place. And the gun he obtained was legal anyways. So he obtained a gun legally and did something bad with it. So just because he wouldn't have the AR-15, he'd still have tried to do something bad with it. So this is a very stupid comment. But, they got to push their political agenda no matter what.
Of gun violence in America. I wonder if you could, with your...
a lot more... Here's the thing. A lot more, the answer to gun violence probably in general is to get fathers and families back together. Gotta get fathers in the home and families back together, and you're encouraging that. We don't have an encouragement of the nuclear family, and that's why there's an increase in gun violence. Let me just point this out. The people that have that are involved in most of the gun crimes, it's black people. What do black people don't have? Fathers in the home. They don't have strong nuclear families like they used to. But they're not going to actually talk about this. They're not. This is why we have a really gynocentric political party, because they always try to do like these very these type of situations. They always go to emotion. Whenever there's a shooting, what happens? Instantly, we gotta ban guns. Ban all guns. We gotta put into more laws. It's all based on emotion. There's no logic behind it. Okay, well, how are you gonna ban guns? How are you gonna take away guns? Since 99% of the time, the guns that are being used are guns that have been followed to the letter law, purchased legally. I can't think of a single mass shooting where the individual had an illegal firearm and used an illegal firearm. I can't think of one. Maybe there is, but I can't think of one. So these people are following the letter of the law and still doing bad things. So you think more law is going to help? It's ridiculous. It's just a complete... All of it's just always emotion. There's never actually real logic behind it. And it's fucking annoying.
Your help, Director Wray, understand a few aspects of the investigation. It's my understanding that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms...
Thank you. Thank you, honey. My lovely wife decided to bring me breakfast. Oh, I'm sorry. No, my slave's wife. My wife, who's my slave, brought me breakfast.
and Explosives ATF, was quickly able to trace the gun's purchaser, using records from an out-of-business gun store, records that the government is required to correct. Some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have suggested that collection should stop. There have been efforts to digitize it, which have been resisted. Can you tell us about how the origin of this gun purchase was discovered and the technology used?
What I guess what I can say is we located a number of firearms associated with the shooter and his family. I think it was a total of 14 in the house. The weapon that he used for the attempted assassination was an AR-style rifle that was purchased legally, that he, is my understanding, acquired, I think bought actually from his father, who was the one who originally bought it, again, legally.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time has expired, so I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you. Director, I'll try to ask questions that are answerable too. I think that's been done pretty well on both sides. You do the advanced threat assessment and deliver that information.
Okay, this guy's is a useless one. Hold on.
Reporting system.
Correct.
And you would take issue, would you not, with any proposal that would change or alter that chain of command?
Okay, yeah.
Were there any FBI agents or informed human
Yeah, so those last two were fucking useless questions that they asked.
Back.
in any way prior to the assassination? Was the shooter on the FBI's radar in any way prior to the assassination attempt?
Good
We
question.
did not have any information about the shooter. He was not in our holdings before the shooting.
No communication in any chat rooms, no CIs or confidential human sources have any interaction with?
No, we've run a thorough search for the subject through all of our holdings, and he was not in them anywhere.
Were there any FBI agents or informants present at the Trump rally in Butler?
Not to my knowledge.
And Mr. Jordan was talking to you about Iran. Were law enforcement resources diverted from the protection of President Trump to John Bolton as a consequence of concern that Mr. Bolton might have been the target of Iranian malign efforts?
That's really a Secret Service decision. I don't know the answer to that. That's really something they would know better. What I can tell you is that there are a number of individuals. You mentioned one who we've brought a case, a specific criminal case for the Iranians targeting for assassination. But how
are you gonna get that answer to us? Whether or not resources were diverted from Trump to Bolton, is that just going to be part of your review?
I think that's going to be part of the reviews by the inspector. The inspector.
Like I said, this is very useless questioning. Again, all the FBI cares about is the shooter. Ask questions about the shooter and shit of that nature. Stop caring about what the Secret Service. What you need to do is call the head of the detail and the head of the advanced team for the Secret Service and ask them these questions. All right. Those are the people who are going to know the answers to all these questions. Now you have specifically regarding protocol of the Secret Service shit. It has nothing to do at all with the FBI, and they don't give two shits.
Inspector General.
I think that's an important point because the Inspector General for DHS has really fallen out of favor with the administration. Worried that they're about to fire the critical. Be a bad idea to fire the IG for DHS a little bit. How often do you brief President Biden?
You mean on this?
Like weekly, monthly?
Now Gage is trying to get like, did you know Biden was terrible? Again, this hearing isn't supposed to be about Biden. It's supposed to be about the shooter and all that shit. Yes, this is an assassination attempt. If you want to find out about Biden's health and shit like that, form a separate committee. It's so dumb.
Daily, his decline. So when did you notice, right, but we've had it observed so often, candidate in the country. So
Yes. As I said, those
eventful. But in the work with the vice president, the order with all the Hamas that to hide the real Joe Biden,
those hours.
right? Okay. I just, I think the American people want to know how he has basically put him out to pasture. And since you had close with all of us about how things were going with him, I guess we'll have to figure that
You
out.
can count on me to be straight with you, sir.
We'll see.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from,
But that included
right.
things like this drone activity we just talked about.
gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, thank you for.
Now, Schumer, the beginning of Schumer's questioning is a bunch of bullshit. He's getting a dig at Trump. But if I remember correctly, he did ask at least a few good questions. So we'll listen to that. We'll listen to his dig at Trump. See if you can spot it, because it's very, very subtle.
For appearing. Thank you for the extraordinary job that you're doing. Please convey our thanks to the men and women at the Bureau for their incredible work. I've worked with them since I was an assistant U.S. attorney more than 30 years ago. Let me start with a threshold question I'm curious about. When I applied to be an assistant U.S. attorney, I had to go through a background check. Do candidates for the FBI have to go through background checks?
Yes.
Would someone with dozens of felony convictions survive a background check for the Bureau?
No.
So they would never be hired by the Bureau?
No.
Well, clearly the Bureau has, you don't have to comment on this, I know you won't, but clearly the Bureau has higher standards for their hiring than one of America's great political parties. Let me turn to.
Now, Schumer tweeted out saying, "Well, because earlier the reason they asked that is I can't remember which congressman, but one of them was asking about DEI hires and all that shit. Again, completely useless and irrelevant to this particular panel and hearing. But Schumer was like, well, they kept asking, about DEI hire standards and shit. So I had to ask a question of my own regarding that. No, he was going to do it anyways, regardless of no Republican had, or no one had asked a thing about DEI hires at all. He still would have asked the question and taken that dig at Trump. And here's a fun fact that many people probably don't know. Because he's talking about, does the FBI do background checks on potential hires, blah, blah, blah. You know who doesn't get a background check? The president. The president doesn't get a background check at all. I bet you didn't know that. The president doesn't have a background check. He gets all access to all sorts of classified material and all that stuff. But you know what? He doesn't get a background check. Like one, conducted by the FBI. So guess what? Most jobs have higher standards than when it comes to hiring people than we do for electing a president, because the president doesn't get a background check. So this question Schumer just posed was completely useless, because not even the president gets a background check.
The events of the tragic shooting. Have you been able to gain access to the shooter's electronic communications, social media?
Shout out to my wife for surprising me with some breakfast. Delicious. Some yummy eggs and toast. She makes the best eggs. Shout out to her.
Media, and with the caveats that you mentioned, that investigation is still early. Have you been able to make any deductions, or are there any indications of the shooter's motivation from those electronic holdings?
So in terms of our ability to access it, we have been able to get into and exploit a number of electronic devices, digital devices, but not all of them yet. And then within his various accounts, we've been able to get access to some of them, but some of them we're still waiting on. Some of them we may never get access to because of the encryption issue that it presents an increasingly vexing barrier for law enforcement, not just the FBI, but for law enforcement all over the country. But we're still drilling into that. We have some information. Some places we've been able to look. Some places we will be able to look. Some places we may never be able to see, no matter how good our legal process is. But that's what we're looking at right now. In terms of what we've been able to find so far, a lot of the usual repositories of information have not yielded anything notable in terms of motive or like ideology. Having said that, it does appear fairly clear that he was interested in public figures, kind of more broadly, and I think this is important, that starting somewhere around July 6th or so, he became very focused on former President Trump and this rally. And so one of the things that I can share here today that has not been shared yet is that we've just in the last couple of days found that from our review, to your point about devices, analysis of a laptop that the investigation ties to the shooter reveals that on July 6th, he did a Google search for, quote, how far away was Oswald from Kennedy?
So for all those who don't know, Oswald is the person that people say assassinated Kennedy. I highly recommend you go check out Fresh and Fit's video on JFK. I might actually do a review of that. But anyways, that's who Lee Harvey Oswald is. That's why that's a significant thing for them to find. Is that's the I think that was the last
so that's the
presidential
search obviously is significant in terms of his state of mind. And that is the same day that it appears that he registered for the Butler rally.
And when you
That's
say
not the
that his,
that's not the last presidential assassination attempt or even candidate, because I know Robert F. Kennedy, that happened to them. But that's like the most famous one, I would say, is the Kennedy one. So that has some significance as why.
Electronic Holdings indicated an interest in different public figures without revealing anything you're not comfortable revealing about those public figures. Can you tell us anything generally about them, either the offices they hold, their political party, or was it simply people of a high profile?
Well, a couple things. First, the images that we've recovered so far from, I can't remember which of his various devices, appeared to be what we call cached images from searches of news articles. So if you do a news article search, of course, if there are photos on it, those photos get stored automatically in your cache, as opposed to me searching or him searching for a specific person and getting up images of that person. As far as the pictures that are like that, doesn't seem to be a whole lot of rhyme or reason to it so far, other than these are all prominent public people, but they cover both parties, they cover both U.S. people and even some foreign public officials. So that part doesn't appear to, that one repository of information doesn't appear to be overly indicative.
That's the wrong one. I didn't want to click that. My apologies.
That could be just because he was reading news stories. So we're still trying to drill into that. That's why all of these outstanding legal process returns that we're waiting on for various accounts, platforms, et cetera, any one of them could be one that would have very indicative, very important information.
If I can be permitted one very short additional question, Chairman. From that, any indication of any other particular target? That is someone who was not just sort of generically the subject of the searches you described, but for which there was more of an interest than others?
There's the information I just described at the moment does not appear particularly indicative of targeting in its own right. But again, that dot, once we get other information, could connect in a way that might be more meaningful. But I'm sharing that piece of information with this committee and with the American public, but I think it's important that we put down a qualification. This does not appear to be some kind of target list or something like that. This is cached images from running searches of news stories. And again, there's nothing at the moment, there's no pattern from that particular.
So I guess basically what he's saying is there's nothing like in particular. Like it wasn't like looking for like these cache images are just images of various political figures. It's not like a kill list or anything like that. I think what he's basically trying to get at.
Piece of information that is overly remarkable so far.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Director, you previously told us that you consider the situation on the southern border to be a massive security threat to our country.
All right. Again, this is another political theater. Has nothing to do with what the hearing is about. Let's see. So we need to go to. Oh yeah, Eric Swalwell. He did a massive. Gun control. Blah 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 blah. The guy who fucked a Chinese spy really cares about gun control.
Back with us. And the next 5 minutes belong to you, Congressman.
Thank you, Chairman. Director Wray, how many counter snipers were present at the rally that day, and which of the counter snipers took the shot that took out the would-be assassin?
I don't have the number of counter snipers. I know it was the Secret Service counter sniper who took the shot that eliminated the shooter. We've conducted a number of interviews, including of him.
So was it one of the two that we see in the videos on top of the roof, or was it a different location that was chosen?
I'm afraid I don't have that at my fingertips here.
Okay. You mentioned that the would-be assassin bought a 5-foot ladder. You have credit card evidence of that, but it looks like on the scene there was a larger ladder that he might have used. Do you know which ladder he used to get to the roof? And do you have possession of that 5-foot ladder and the other ladder? And do you know how the taller ladder got to the scene?
So this whole business about the ladder is something we're drilling into more. We do have possession of the 5-foot ladder that he purchased close in time to his attempted assassination. That we traced the purchase of that ladder from a receipt, a bloodied receipt that he had on him at the time his body was recovered on the roof. We do not yet know for sure how exactly he got up on the roof. We're looking at, various forensic pieces to try to kind of piece that together. So more to come on that.
Do you know where the 5-foot ladder was found or retrieved? Was it near the roof, or was it still in his vehicle?
Neither. I don't have it in front of me, but I know that it was not. I know that it was not on scene, and I know that it was not in his vehicle. But we can circle back to you and get to that.
Is there any evidence at all that he may have been in contact with somebody else before this occurred that may have had any prior knowledge or may have helped him plan this event?
Well, needless to say, that is a question that we're intensely focused on, because that would obviously be incredibly meaningful. So far, underline, so far, we have not found any evidence of any accomplices or co-conspirators, foreign or domestic.
And you're using geolocation data to see if his cell phone was near another cell phone, I presume?
Right. We're doing lots of different kinds of cellular analysis, geolocation stuff, looking at his accounts. He, from everything we've seen, which is consistent with what we've learned in interviews, a lot of people describe him as a loner. That does kind of fit with what we're seeing in his devices. His list of contacts, for example, is very short, compared to what you would normally see from most people. So it doesn't appear to be a whole lot of interaction between him, face to face or digital with a lot of people.
Okay, thank you.
That doesn't mean there's not any, and that's why we're drilling into. We're trying to talk to anybody who's had any engagement with him whatsoever, digital, in person, classmates, coworkers,
Right.
Et cetera.
Appreciate that. And now I want to talk about another possible assassination attempt. And I'll start by showing a video of President Biden. And this is from recently. This is in the last month. We can play that.
Gallows erected to hang the Vice President, Mike Pence. I think it's fair to say it's one of the darkest days in the history of America.
Okay, and he's referring to January 6th. Were there gallows erected to hang Mike Pence, as the president says here?
I'm not aware of any physical gallows. I can't remember whether from a demonstration perspective, there may not have been some kind of replica or symbol of something like that.
That's my impression. Can we show, can you raise that up so you can see it? It looks like there was some kind of prop that was built. The construction doesn't look like it lasted. That was erected on January. Were erected. It was just.
I don't. I can't be sure.
And some of them.
Those yields back. Gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Director Wray. Political violence of any kind is dangerous, unlawful, and totally unacceptable. Just as we all watched and then unequivocally condemned the attempted assassination attempt on our former
Gentleman from
For line agents across the country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director Wray, for being here for our testimony today, for the work that you do.
Had nothing to do at all with what they're talking about. They just wanted to pitch him on about something entirely unimportant.
Every day, and that your frontline agents across the country do each and every day to protect Americans, to keep our country safe. Also grateful for the work that you're doing in investigating the horrific events of July 13th and the attempted assassination of former President Trump, which everyone must and has condemned. I would first just ask, do you believe that the FBI has the adequate resources to ultimately ensure that your agency gets to the bottom of it and fully investigates this terrible crime?
This chick here next to this guy, she didn't ask. I don't think she asked any questions. She just went on a gun rant, I think, if I remember correctly. She didn't even ask any questions. You're still fucking useless.
Well, we are devoting massive amounts of resources to this specific.
Yeah, this is nothing.
FBI over half. Say, well, why for purchases get evidence from overseas that involve accounts or purchases or communicate. Some of the companies' offices working on. You might say, well, why is that? Well, because some of the early profile. Now, when you have the fiscal year 24 budget for Asia, current result along 3 days on this.
Again, this he does ask good questions, but this right here.
I think, Ray, and of course, we've talked about this during previous hearings in which you've testified, and to be clear, that I think the budget that House Republicans have proposed, which is about a $325 million cut to the FBI, would do precisely what you've described and have deleterious impacts for public safety across our country. And House Democrats are certainly working to prevent those cuts from taking place. You've talked at great length about the events of July 13. There's justifiably a lot of public interest in the investigation, which we understand is ongoing. Wonder if there's anything that you'd like to disclose or provide to the committee or to the public that perhaps has not yet been gleaned during the course of this hearing, and just give you an opportunity, because there's a lot of folks related to the investigation.
One thing I can give an update on, which is pretty fresh here. We had some conversations with some of the members about the access to the roof and the ladder and so forth. And our evidence response teams and their forensic collection, we now believe that the subject climbed onto the roof using some mechanical equipment on the ground and vertical piping on the side of the AGR building.
So it looks like he didn't actually end up using a ladder. He used he climbed a pipe basically.
In other words, we do not believe he used a ladder to get up there.
One question, if the chairman might indulge me with just a few extra seconds. There's an article recently regarding several former Trump administration national security officials who had received a duty to warn briefing from the FBI. And
That might be the end of his good question with that specific.
Get noticed as much. I'm not going to get into where we have or have not used confidential human sources. I can tell you that if you
They didn't. In fact, there was a follow-up in 2019 where they had only done a few of the
hospital
shot, and then what were like your immediate actions, response to that as director?
I was about to have dinner with family, and I was horrified and angry.
I'm just thinking, the reason I asked the question is because I'm still trying to figure out kind of the lanes, what the FBI would respond to and what the Secret Service has the responsibility to respond to. Can you just kind of cover that again?
Sure. So the FBI is not responsible for, has never really been part of our mandate or mission for the physical security of venues, of specific protectees or anything like that. That's, if it's somebody within Secret Service's scope, that's their mandate and mission. We are a law enforcement and intelligence agency. And so if you think about it this way, we're the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We're not the Federal Bureau of Security. You might say, well, what's the difference? Well, there is a difference. We investigate crimes. We investigate threats to national security, but we don't, questions about security posture, the adequacy of resources and assets that were deployed to protect a specific individual, whether there's enough security, and certainly the staffing of that security is not something the FBI, again, we're 116 years old, has historically done.
So at this point, have you been able to go through the shooter's home and kind of document kind of what you found as far as evidence goes?
So we have been able to search the shooter's home. So again, just sort of tying your first question to your second question now, our role is to conduct an investigation of the shooter and the attack. And so we're going to conduct a painstaking, intense investigation of that. We have, among other scenes that we've processed using evidence response teams, in addition to the rally scene itself, of course, we have been through the shooter's home, his bedroom, other parts of the house, et cetera.
Have you been able to establish that he did go to a range and either zero that weapon in or?
See, this is good information. Let's go back to what he was saying.
Rallies that we've processed using evidence response teams, in addition to the rally scene itself, of course, we have been through the shooter's home,
So we've been through the home.
his bedroom, other parts of the house, et cetera.
Have you been able to establish that he did go to?
So obviously, this was already kind of like known without actually being told. Yeah, of course they've been through his home and everything like that, but they've actually accessed his home, and it's where a lot of information is coming from, apparently.
A range?
Not a lot, but you know what I'm trying to say.
And either zero that weapon in or, at least target shoot that weapon prior to the assassination attempt?
So we do assess that he went to a shooting range the day before, not the only time he went to a shooting range. He was a fairly, avid might be a little strong, but a fairly avid, shooting hobbyist. And so he went to, belonged to different.
So now we got confirmation he was, quote unquote training, or at least he shot a lot. Okay.
Different sort of clubs and went to certain ranges and that kind of thing. We do believe, based on what we've seen so far, that he went to a shooting range the day before, and that he shot an AR style rifle at that range the day before. I'm not sure we know for sure that it's the weapon that he used, but I think we assess that it probably is.
Have you been able to interview his parents?
Yes, we have.
And was there anything that was gained from that interview that would lead you to believe that they certainly were aware of what was going on?
I guess I want to be careful about talking about specific people's interviews, but I would say that his parents were cooperative with us. And as I've said before, and hopefully this gets at your question, we have not identified any accomplices, co-conspirators.
All right, so now we officially have, there's no co-conspirators so far. There's no accomplice. This seems to be a lone gunner thing.
Or anything along those lines.
So it's the FBI's position right now that he still acted independently.
Again, we're still, I know it seems like a lifetime since July 13th, but we're still early stages, but we have not seen anything so far that would suggest to us that he acted with others.
How does the FBI view not just a Trump rally, but political rallies versus other types of events, from a security perspective, compared to a college football game or any mass, large crowd type gathering? Because I think one of the things that's most difficult to really to swallow at this point is that the idea that these Trump rallies have been happening for years, and that there could be such a lax approach to the physical security of those fairgrounds that day. And I'm wondering, where does this fall? And then on top of that, that there were other presidential candidates out there that didn't have full Secret Service protection. RFK Jr. has been the most vocal about it. I was wondering if you could comment on the facilities as well as providing security for presidential candidates.
Well, again, I want to be a little bit careful to stay in my lane because, again, security posture and the adequacy of the security posture is really the core expertise and responsibility of agencies like the Secret Service. But certainly it is, I think, fair to say that outdoor events, whether they're political rallies or, as you say, a college football game in an open stadium, a concert, these are places that are often, particularly challenging to secure adequately because the range of threats that can face them are higher. In addition to that, has been discussed a little bit here already in today's hearing, just threats to public officials, including politicians, is an increasingly pervasive part of today's landscape. And so that adds to the challenge. So you're talking about the combination of individuals who are increasingly targeted for violence, combined with venues that are softer and harder to secure targets, I guess is the way I would answer. But again, those kinds of questions, the adequacy of the security posture, all the resources that were or were not devoted, all that stuff, is my understanding would be very much in scope for the DHS Inspector General investigation. And
Again, useless fucking question. Just ask about the shooter and all his shit. Don't ask about anything else.
this outside independent panel that's been.
I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Director, I think we're going to be able to get two more members' times of question, then we have to get to the.
Or not doing, perhaps that's on us.
And we will share or relevant to them for those anything that we come across.
We go to some deep secrets review. Going to raise
Review.
as he was on top of the roof. Apparently, another officer from another police division saw him and quickly ducked down because the shooter aimed a gun at him. And then the shooter apparently, was he prone at the time he took the shot toward the president?
So my understanding is that the local officer who that we're talking about, with the assistance of another local officer, was able to kind of get up and see onto the roof where he observed the shooter, I believe, in a prone shooting position. The shooter then turned and faced him, the local officer, with the weapon.
From the prone position.
That's my understanding.
And then he went back to the prone position.
And this is all seconds before the shooter took.
So that's very important. Is what he's saying here is officers came up, he saw the guy pointed his gun at him, they went down, and then the guy went from pointing his gun at him right back onto Trump and fired. So that's important. Okay, because what it sounded like when it was first reported is they saw him, they get it down, and then the guy had a few more minutes before, he had some. But what the FBI director is saying is the guy looked at them, pointed his gun at these officers. Officers jumped down, and then within seconds reacquired Trump and fired. So you can have some forgiveness from those officers for not being able to act fast enough to potentially avoid this.
But that entire time, the shooter was in the scope sight of the counter sniper, correct?
That one
Not
I'd
gonna have
have
an
to
answer
double
for
check
that.
on. I know we've interviewed.
That's more of a question for the Secret Service. or the case agent, the SAC, the special agent in charge of the investigation. That's who this question actually should belong to, or even Secret Service, the advanced team leader, or whoever was in charge of the counter snipers. Those are questions that are that's where it's best fit for these type of questions are best fit for. He's not going to know. He's a director. He's a politician, basically.
Interviewed the counter sniper, but I'm not sure I know the
But the
answer.
counter sniper didn't take a shot until after the assassin attempted to shoot the former president and others. He got off 8 shots before the counter sniper shot the shooter. What's with that protocol? Can you get that fixed?
Well, I really want to be careful not to be given the scope.
He's the FBI director. He's not the Secret Service director. He's got nothing for you. He's like, I don't fucking know. I don't care. This is Secret Service. I got nothing for you.
Of our investigation, somehow second guessing the very difficult act and decision it takes for a counter sniper to kill another human being in that situation. It's all happening in seconds. So
8 shots.
Yeah.
And that was after he'd been seen for 20 minutes. I yield back. Thank you.
Director,
All right, so they take a big break because the Israeli Prime Minister came in and interrupted this thing. So they were gone for about 2 hours ish. Yeah, about 2 hours they were gone. Let's see. There we go. Okay.
I greatly appreciate this event that occurred, the attempted assassination of President Trump on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania, was a level 5 alarm alert to this country that that our elected officials, our leaders, the president, the former president, are not safe, and we need to reevaluate from the ground up exactly how we are to go about providing that protection. The information you provided dealing with 8 cartridges from the roof, the drone, the fact that 2 explosive devices were found in the car, 1 at home. That was a remote detonation device that he had on him.
So it sounds like now he had several explosive devices. Now we don't know what his objective was with those explosive devices. He could have planned to use it as an escape thing. You know, he shoots Trump and then he hits the switch, blows up the car. That distracts people from where he was shot at, allowing time for him to escape, for all we know. But it sounds like there was several explosive devices. There was like 1 or 2, I think, found in his car, and then 1 was found at his home. Interesting.
The fact that his phone was using encrypted platforms. He only had 1 phone, correct?
Oh, sorry. He had 1 phone, although we've identified other phones that he may have used that may not have been his phone. So, for example, we think in certain instances he might have used his dad's phone. Again, not necessarily related to the attack, but we're trying to make sure that we process and exploit every device he could have used. And we keep, which is part of why I keep making this point, which I know you all are probably tired of me making about this being an ongoing investigation, because we keep identifying new pieces of equipment, new accounts, what have you.
And the fact that you are in real time informing us about what you're finding as you're performing this investigation is very helpful. And
Another thing about this is a giant like stroking session. They're stroking the FBI director. They're stroking themselves. It's so fucking annoying.
clarifying the fact that he went to the range a day before and shot an AR. Now, my understanding is that the AR he used on the 13th was his father's. Is that correct?
Well, yes and no. It was originally, his father bought it legally, but then our understanding so far is that his father then conveyed it to him, sold it, in fact, to his son. So originally his father's, at the time of the shooting,
Legal.
the shooters.
That's okay. So that's new
Well, that's
information.
legal.
Was that provided to you by the father?
I think it was partly from that. I think we also saw some documentation to support it.
Okay. Investigators also have said that the shooter posted, quote, July 13th will be my premiere. Watch it as it unfolds on an online gaming platform sometime before he tried to assassinate President Trump. Can you confirm that, and how much time elapsed between this posting and the attempt on July 13th?
So I'm really glad you asked about that, because that is a situation where, again, in our effort to give real-time information, since we've provided that information, we have since learned that July 13th premiere, profile page on the gaming platform, it turns out it was not the shooter.
Okay.
That it was some other individual as part of some sick joke who, after the shooting, created a profile page pretending to be the shooter.
Wow.
And so, of course, that person is now admitted to it. And, but anyway, my point being, among the other challenges that we as investigators have, you have people who create accounts in today's world, create accounts pretending to be somebody that they're, and it's not the actual person.
Now, the
So
shooter,
that's troubling, obviously, and it makes our jobs even harder as investigators.
thank you for clarifying that. Did he have an online gaming account?
We do believe he was a gamer, and
Video games is fault, guys.
he had different kinds of gaming accounts. So that's part of why
Any information gleaned from those?
Not yet, but again, some of those legal process returns I'm still waiting on.
Now, during the attempted assassination, Crooks was wearing a T-shirt from a popular YouTube channel. Have you been able to access his selection of YouTube videos that he's watched?
I believe we have seen some of his search history, but I think we've got a ways to go on that. I know there's some manual work that we're doing on that. I think the most notable thing that we've found recently, which I don't think has been shared until today, is that on a laptop that the investigation ties to him, that on July 6th, it revealed a Google search, and his search, if it was him, again, it's a laptop tied to him. We obviously believe it's him, but we'll continue to investigate. But his Google search was, how far away was Oswald from Kennedy?
Right.
And
Horrifying.
yes, absolutely.
Can you clarify that you have in your possession all of the video that was taken on that day at the scene?
We've collected mountains of video. Part of the reason
I commit to providing us with that video.
Well, we're going to work with the committee and share information as best we can. Part of the reason I hedged on whether we have it all is, as you can appreciate, in today's world, everybody with a phone has the ability to take footage, and so we're finding things kind of left and right.
You have all the law enforcement video.
I believe we have all the law enforcement video, but we're still collecting evidence.
And I hope you would provide that to us and to the American people. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Director, just to be clear, the photo and the message on the online gaming account, I think your testimony was to Mr. Klein that was somebody else posing as the shooter. Is that right?
Correct. Somebody after July 13th created this profile, pretending to be the shooter, and sent us down a rabbit trail, which we've now tied off.
That's important information. The gentlelady from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director Wray, for being here. And I want to add my voice to the chorus of folks who are just devastated by the illness and passing of Sheila Jackson Lee. What a champion. What a role model. I always called her the hardest working member of Congress. She was everywhere on every issue. She'll be greatly missed. Director Wray, I thank you for what you said earlier, which is leaning in. This is such an extraordinary set of events. The attempted assassination of Donald Trump, the stealing of the life of a father, a firefighter, somebody who protected lives, Corey Comparator, serious injuries to two others. So I thank you, because you are trying to give us what you can without jeopardizing the investigation, and I think that's very helpful. Did the shooter also investigate other high-profile folks? We had heard some reporting around that early on.
Well, you say investigate other folks. I think this is a place where we still have a lot more work to do. Part of what we did find was a bunch of cached images of a variety of public figures But again, cached images are those images that you get when you pull up a news story from any number of news sites. If there are photographs in the article, those images are automatically put into the cache on your computer. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you were searching for that person's image. We do have the fact that starting around, at the least around the period early July, so the search that I just mentioned related to Oswald and Kennedy, that's about July 6th, which is the same day we believe that he registered for the rally. And the day before, he traveled to the grounds for the first time. And so I think there is a certain amount of searches related to former President Trump that during that period we're seeing, consistent with some kind of planning or reconnaissance, if you want to call it that, in advance of the rally. But that's sort of confined to that, or concentrated, maybe is a better word, in that July period, after the announcement of the rally and before the shooting.
Can you speak to the conveyance of the gun? This is a 20-year-old young man. His father owned the gun originally, AR-15, am I correct?
AR style, yeah.
AR style. 20-year-old man. When did the father sell the gun to him? And what documents do you have? How much money transpired? What date?
Yeah, I do know that, I know, we believe based on what we've seen that his father, after purchasing the gun legally, sold the gun to his son. I don't know that I have the date of that transfer or the amount of the transfer, although we may be able to get that to you as a file. I just don't have it in front of me.
Do you know when the father bought it?
We know. I don't, as I'm sitting here testifying in front of you, I don't have that in front of me, so I don't have it at my fingertips.
I'm just wondering if it's proximate to this event.
I do not believe that the gun was purchased, that is the gun that was used. I do not believe it was purchased particularly close in time to the shooting. But how far in advance? It may have been a year before, give or take. But again, we'll go back and double check that on you. I do know that on the day of the shooting, at about 1:30 p.m., he bought 50 rounds of ammunition. So if you think about the day of, or if you back up a little bit, so the day before he goes to the shooting range, the day of he goes to the grounds the morning of the event for, I think, around an hour. He buys the ammunition at around 1:30. At around 3:50 is when he's back on the grounds of the rally, and that's when he used the drone that I've talked about already today. And then, of course, fast forward till just after 6 o'clock when the worst happened.
And we had thought maybe over the weekend there was a conversation around a classified briefing for members. I hope that will happen as soon as it's feasible for you and for the other agencies involved. And he got off 8 shots, and the reporting is that that was in under 6 seconds. He got off 8 shots, fatal to one. My question that I'll leave you with, and I know I'm over time, Mr. Chairman, is we all decry political violence. We decry any. Can you tell us that we could?
Oh my God. There's like some good questions there. Just asking specifics.
They lean to take the temperature
And it's
down.
like, oh, we all
Great,
decry
thank you.
political
Well,
violence.
thank you for the extra time. Yield back.
Gentleman from North Dakota is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I really appreciate you correcting the gaming thing about this is my coming out party, because we're asking you to do something, and we've had acrimony
Just
before the investigation is complete. My only recommendation, or appreciate you coming in, it's a guy with a rangefinder walking the roof with him, because the American people need to know it, but here's why. It's a guy with a rangefinder walking around that everybody noticed and then couldn't find. You know, he scaled to the top of a roof within 150 yards line of sight to the president or Republican former presidential candidate by climbing a drain pipe, and then you said some equipment. He was being pointed out by rally goers everywhere they could, and nobody could figure it out. There's maybe supposed to be local law enforcement in the building, either upstairs or downstairs. And all of this is going on. And I was talking to a colleague of mine yesterday on the floor, and it's like, I hate the conspiracy theories that come out, but this is not the FBI's purview. This is the Secret Service's purview. This is so comically like inept to the average North Dakota citizen. Is just, they look at this and they're like, how could this possibly happen? And so when by you giving us information in a really meaningful way, even though we know the investigation's ongoing and things can change, that at least helps us to deal with that and figure out where we're at. And so, I mean, and you're doing all this. This guy had no combat training, no counter surveillance training that you're aware of, right?
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear
He had
that.
no combat training.
Oh, no, I don't think any, certainly no what we would call, what you and I would call combat training. Obviously, he was a fairly active recreational shooter, so he did plenty of shooting.
A lot of guys in Western North Dakota, right? I mean, all of those different things. And somehow we came within under a
shooter, so he did plenty of shooting.
A lot of guys in Western
Yeah.
North Dakota, right? I mean, all of those different things. And somehow we came within under of an inch of a presidential candidate being shot and killed within 100 days out from an election. And when you look at it, so I just want to be really clear, because there is a lot of this. There is no evidence of another shooter, right?
I mean, another shooter.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the counter sniper who took out the shooter,
Well,
but right. But you're talking about like another.
Anybody else. And you're looking at his online and seeing all that, but there's no evidence he had any other accomplices on scene that day, correct?
Correct. That not that we've seen yet, certainly.
And you said, and Oversight's had a hearing, DHS had a hearing, we're having a hearing now. The Inspector General is going to investigate. We're probably announcing a bipartisan outside panel. But there's another investigation too, right? Because somebody has to clear the shooter. Like, even though it is a Secret Service officer deploying his, I mean, when an FBI agent kills somebody in the line of duty, what's the process?
So we have what we call an agent-involved shooting, is I think what you're getting at. And we have a whole process.
Usually get put on leave, paid leave, get a lawyer, depending on how it is, right?
Some of those things depend, but we have our inspection division does a shoot review of each time when there's one of these situations. And they sometimes have to coordinate with local prosecutors who are also doing some kind of review. But so yes, Secret Service would have a similar kind of process for the counter.
I mean, because you have to actually establish one of the defenses to homicide. Just like, I mean, you don't do it in a court system the same way everybody else does, but you have to justify that shooting was justified. So when the FBI does that, do they conduct that all internally?
Most of the time, yes. Every once in a while, there's a situation where the Inspector General gets involved.
Do you know how the Secret Service does it?
I don't.
Okay. And I just think that's important, because when we're talking about how this works, and I don't think anybody is arguing it wasn't, anybody who's seen it knows what happens, but it's just knowing it and making sure that the process is handled correctly. And I just want to shift gears with my last 30 seconds really quickly, because we had a hearing on the northern border in Grand Forks, and you were talking about specific threats from Iran, but also generally. And we've diverted an exceptional amount of resources at the southern border. Our interactions, 114% increase in apprehensions. And the one specific thing, with all due respect to my friends and my neighbors from Canada, it's a lot easier to get into Canada for some of these countries where we have these real issues with terrorist threats than it is to the United States, particularly Iran. And are you guys monitoring that and making sure whatever coordination you have with Canada, that we're paying attention to that as well?
We have an excellent relationship, we the FBI, with our Canadian counterparts, both RCMP, the Mounties, as some people euphemistically call them, and CSIS, they're my intelligence service counterparts. We have great relationships with them, and terrorism is, I find, probably the number one thing we talk about.
Yeah, they're understaffed and overworked on the northern border, and they can use all the help you get. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, thank you for today. I think I greatly appreciate your candor. I know it's highly unusual to go into this level of detail during an active investigation, and I know it's a special and unique circumstance given the nature of what happened that day. I'll ask my colleagues that we not try and take advantage of this in other circumstances.
He's basically calling out everyone else, saying, "Hey, can we leave all the other political bullshit aside and just talk about what we're here to talk about? It's far more important." I love it.
I think we need to be careful about pressuring our investigators, to disclose information in the middle of an investigation in a casual or routine way. But thank you for what you've done here today. I do want to mention this too. Like Congressman Correa, I went up to Butler with Homeland Security Committee, and had a chance to meet with a number of the people there, including people who were there at the rally. And several of them were elected officials. In fact, one of them that spoke with me a lot was sitting directly behind Mr. Trump when he was shot, and she had video that she'd taken, and she'd love to share it with you all. But she mentioned a couple of things too that I hope you all will have a chance to have conversations about. And I know some of it's going to be in the Secret Service lane, some's going to be in the FBI lane. But one of the things she talked about was the fact that the day before the shooting, she and other officials in the town and people who just wanted to prepare the stage showed up and started working on putting the bunting up and decorating it. But the point she noted was that none of them had been vetted. There was nobody there to keep an eye on them and make sure that, everything that was being done was appropriate. And she actually sort of thought in this in the context of hearing that a gun was found, or a gun was perhaps hidden at the site before the shooter was able to get it and use it. I don't know those details, but those are some of the things that came up that day. She also mentioned that there was sort of the outer perimeter. So you had a perimeter around the stage that the Secret Service had set up. Beyond that, you had a field, and then you had the building where the company was, and the shooter got on the roof. Apparently, there was a sort of a second level of a perimeter there that wasn't particularly restricted from an access standpoint, as with the street that was just beyond that. So she raised, and another elected official raised as well, issues about security that may actually kind of get into what you're talking about, whether the ladder was there, how the guy got on the roof. There are all sorts of issues with respect to that. And there was a lot of people, as you said, that had videotape. I talked to 3 that were showing me videos while I was standing out there in the grounds. But I had a couple of questions to ask of you briefly. Apparently, there was no Secret Service recordation of communications during that day. There's no radio runs, we call them, but there's no tapes. Do you know if there are any recorded conversations among law enforcement from that day?
I don't know the details of that. I believe there may be some, but I don't have in front of me exactly what we've seen or heard.
Okay. And then with respect to email communications, there were a lot of issues about, because my personal view, having gone to the site, was that they just shouldn't have had the rally there. It should not have been permitted. I thought there were just too many roofs. He picked one, but there was like a half dozen others that he could have picked on the other side of the field. And as Eli Crane, a congressman who was a sniper for the U.S. military, said, there was a water tower that actually would have been a better site. Probably that Secret Service should have used, but could have been used as well. But had the lead up to that decision, and Congressman Correa raised this, who made this decision about how to pick the site? And apparently there was back and forth between local law enforcement, Secret Service, and the campaign. And I was kind of curious as to whether that's something that your investigation is going into or not.
So I think that primarily falls within the scope of the 2 other reviews, that is the DHS Inspector General review and the outside panel, independent panel that's been announced. Certainly we are interviewing law enforcement personnel, but the security preparations, the adequacy of the security preparations.
That's the other lane?
That's the other lane.
All right, I only got 15 seconds left. Quick question for you with probably not a quick answer, but this scenario is kind of the worst case scenario from a couple of standpoints. Got a lone wolf shooter with no red flags that we've heard of so far. Nobody should have known that this was coming. He didn't have a criminal record and that sort of thing. Easy access to an assault weapon. I had a discussion like this with, I think, Congressman Roy and Congressman Bishop several months ago. What is it we can do to try and preempt those kinds of scenarios? We've got gun violence all over the country.
Look, here's the answer. There's nothing you can do. Bad people are going to do bad people or bad things, regardless of what you do. Okay, unless you're gonna like look to strip every freedom possible. Bad people are gonna and monitor people like a motherfucker. Bad people are gonna be bad. There's nothing you can really do to stop any of this. You just need to react when it does happen, and hopefully react well enough that to ensure that it doesn't end in a death, except for the shooters or the bad person.
Country, including in my district. This is one example, but this scenario is the worst possible that I can think of from the standpoint of no intervention prevention efforts that can be put in place to try and address it. But I'm kind of curious if you have any thoughts to the contrary on that.
I don't know that I have any magic solution to the problem, and I certainly don't want to be.
Look, if you really want to prevent this kind of stuff, you're going to have to monitor people to the point that there's no actual privacy. The Fourth Amendment. You're going to have to get rid of the Fourth Amendment. You're going to have to outright ban guns. You're going to have to outright ban freedom of speech. You're going to have to do a whole lot of tyranny to maybe even come close to doing anything about this. So, it's a very pointless question because there's nothing you can do about this. Bad people are going to do bad things regardless of what you do.
Proposing, legislative ideas. That's not really my role. Certainly, dangerous weapons, especially high-powered weapons, in the hands of the wrong person represent a real concern for law enforcement, including to law enforcement, sometimes as the victims, as we saw very tragically down near Miami with 2 of our agents killed. That's probably all I can say on that. I do, while we're on the subject of firearms, Mr. Chairman, I have an answer to Congresswoman Dean's question. I might as well give it now, which is about the purchase of the firearm. I'm told that the father purchased the firearm in 2013, so quite a while ago, and then he sold it to his son in October of 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back and thank.
John from California is recognized for 5 minutes.
Director Wray, to the best of your understanding, how close did the assassin's bullet come to killing President Trump?
My understanding is that either it or some shrapnel is what grazed his ears. So I don't know that I have the actual
very
distance.
close, though.
What's that?
Very, very close, you would agree.
Yes.
Is this the biggest security failure that you've seen in your career?
Ooh. Well, certainly, I think former Director Cheadle has already, I think.
The answer is yes. It's the biggest failure that probably anyone's seen in regards to a security standpoint.
Acknowledged that this was a significant, at the very least, a significant operational failure. I forgot her exact words, but I will defer on that. I think
we really haven't seen anything like this in at least decades in this country, right?
The attempted assassination of a president, current or former, is a historic event.
Was this a sophisticated plot that Thomas Crooks carried out?
Well, I think probably depends on your definition of sophisticated, right? So on the one hand, he's a 20-year-old, seems to, from what we've seen so far, loner, without a lot of elaborate criminal history, without any criminal history or anything like that. On the other hand, he did clearly do some level of planning and recon.
When did the planning start, to the best of your knowledge?
What's that?
When did the planning start?
Well, we're still drilling into that, but we assess that on July 6th,
so a week in advance.
For example, it seems to be that he seems to become very focused on it, because that's when, as I've testified here today, that's when the laptop that we've tied to him has the Google search, how far away was Oswald from Kennedy?
I mean, that seems like an indication of a total amateur, right? Someone who's searching for that and he's doing it a week in advance.
Again, I don't want to characterize him. I frankly don't want to give him the credit of characterizing him as amateur or professional. But what I will say is that there are some things he did that involve a certain amount of planning and preparation. On the other hand, if you're telling me, do I think this is the most sophisticated ever? Of course not. We deal with much more sophisticated adversaries all the time.
You probably prepare for more sophisticated plans to target high-level officials.
I'm sorry, could
you probably prepare for more sophisticated plans to target high-level officials, correct?
We don't do physical security, but yes, obviously we're investigating much more sophisticated attacks all the time.
How about the encrypted applications on his phone? Were those there for a while, or did he download them, in the days or weeks leading up to the assassination attempt?
I don't have the answer to that sitting here right now. I think it may vary from platform to platform because he had a number of encrypted messaging apps on it. And again, as I've said, we're trying to get access to that content. And that's important. I think it's important for everybody on this committee to understand that this is a real problem for law enforcement, that these companies, let's be clear here, these companies are designing their platforms in a way to, no matter how heinous the crime, no matter how rock solid the legal process,
I'm run out of time,
get
so I want
access.
to get the next question. At this moment, are you confident that high-level protectees, presidents, former presidents, are well protected?
Well, it's not really for me to say. I have a lot of respect for the men and women of the Secret Service who provide protection, just as I do for their counterparts at other agencies.
You can't say one way or the other. Your assessment as director of the FBI whether the president is safe?
I'm not an expert on protective details and physical security. What I would tell you is that we have a very robust system for sharing threat information with those agencies, and that in my experience, the men and women of the Secret Service are professionals who are hardworking, who are literally willing to take a bullet for their protectee.
You mentioned a thwarted assassination.
I don't know if that's true. I think we all seen that woman who was squatting. I don't know if that's true.
Assassination attempt against former President Bush. Are there any other thwarted assassination attempts against current or former presidents that you could discuss?
No.
Not that immediately come to mind, but I'd have to go back and think about that. I mean, obviously we've been around for a while, and current and former presidents are high-profile targets who are attractive to all kinds of bad guys.
There's also been reports that the shooter's parents called local law enforcement to say he was missing on the day of the shooting. Is that correct? And if so, is that something that you would see as a sort of a natural thing for them to do? It seems like a 20-year-old who's been missing for a few hours. Maybe his parents don't, first thing they do, call the police. What was going on with that situation?
So my recollection, I don't have this in front of me. My recollection is they did call, concerned that he was missing. My recollection, though, is that they didn't call until this was after I think this was after the event. But I'm not certain of that, so I want to, hedge on that slightly because I have to get back to you to confirm that. I believe that part of the issue was that when he last saw his father, he, I think, indicated to his father that he was going to shoot at the range. And then, of course, he didn't go to the range and he didn't come back from that. And so I think that may have added to the level of concern.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Wyoming is recognized.
Doesn't mean we won't. We're looking all over the place, and we're going to leave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director, for being here today. I know it's been a very long day, busy day on Capitol Hill, and also I want to apologize in advance if there's any repetitive questions from me. But I have to ask, given that our sitting president resigned from the campaign on Sunday and the Secret Service Director resigned yesterday, you don't plan on resigning anytime soon, do you, sir?
No, sir.
Good to go. Earlier today.
All right, that's a little funny. A little levity going on here. It's a very serious day. So a little levity. Nothing wrong with that. Why aren't these people laughing? That was a funny thing.
You told this committee that you recovered 8 bullet cartridges from the roof next to the shooter. And given that testimony, I have 2 questions for you. How many shots were fired at President Trump, and how many shots were fired in total of the entire?
I can't remember if that was one of the videos or clips I clipped to, but yeah, he said there were 8 cartridges found. The guy asked specifically how many shots were fired. Is it this one? This might be this
day. I know I keep hearing 8, but were there any more that were unaccounted
Okay,
for?
yeah. So it was interesting because it was a very skillful dodge. Because they asked specifically how many shots were fired at Trump, I think, and he said, "Well, we found 8 cartridges." Doesn't really, answer the question. So that was interesting. But go on. I'm so tired. I'm so sorry.
The best information I have right now is 8 shots. As to the sequence, I'm not sure I have that sitting here right now. As I said to the chairman, I'm going to go back to my team and see if we've got that nailed down yet. And if we have, I'm happy to share it with you and the rest of the committee.
Please do, sir. Thank you very much for that. You also mentioned that the shooter used encrypted messages to communicate. Specifically, do you know what apps or what apps that he was using to communicate? And can you confirm if he was communicating with any foreign nationals through the encrypted messages?
So as to the names of the apps, I don't have that right here in front of me. As far as communicating with any foreign actors, I'll say 2 things. One, we haven't, as I think I've testified before, but we have not, at the moment at least, identified any accomplices or co-conspirators, foreign or domestic. So that as to foreign contacts, of course, that's part of why we want to get access to the encrypted messages, because that might tell us whether he'd been in contact with somebody.
Thank you. Let's talk about motive. I know the FBI has taken a lead role in investigating the assassination on President Trump. Your team has searched the shooter's phone, conducted countless interviews, done extensive research into his motives. As of today, July 24th, 2024, do you and your team know the motive of the shooter or have any idea on what could have driven it?
Well, know and have any idea are two very different things. Okay. We do not know the motive. That is obviously one of the central questions in our investigation. And it's been very frustrating to us that a lot of the usual kind of low-hanging fruit places that we would find at have not yielded significant clues about his motive.
It's very interesting. They have access to his phones. They've broken into it and everything like that. So they got all it, they got into his phones and shit, but they can't really, espouse, figure out a motive yet. It's very interesting. It's very odd.
Having said that, we have seen indications that he was interested in public figures, and that in the period around July 6th, leading up to July 13th, he does seem to have become very focused on this particular rally and former President Trump. But exactly what his thought process was in doing that, that's something that's still very much under investigation.
I want to make something clear to the American people to try to help out what motive could be. And again, it's not my job to steer it, but here are some of my thoughts. I'm not sure about motive either, specifically. I can tell you that after this assassination,
I'm tired of this rhetoric.
1 month before the new election,
why your race speaker
and press people is that we need to do better.
Refreshing. I was in the oversight hearing earlier this week.
All right, there we go. That's basically the end of all the good questions. Everyone else was, politically motivated or crap questions. So yeah. So there we go. That's the that was the testimony. What'd you guys think? Okay. Some good questions. Some people actually trying to figure out. Like I said, a lot of it, the majority of it was political posturing. That's all it really was. So I tried to basically avoid that as much as possible. Some slipped in a bit, but what can you do? Oh man, I'm so tired. Check out the Crucible. They'll be doing a show today, and they'll be debating Andrew will be debating Destiny on the whole January 6th stuff. I look forward to watching Destiny getting his ass kicked. I hope you all have a good day. Peace out, and I'll see you later. Peace.